Welcome to the Directors UK podcast. We're the professional association for UK film and TV directors. No matter the format, no matter the genre, our featured directors share their approach to the craft. We hope you enjoy.
Lovely to see you all. I'm Andy Harrower, CEO at Directors UK. Tonight we have in conversation Jesse Eisenberg with A Real Pain, hosted by Sandra Hebron.
Thank you, Sandra.
Hi everyone, how nice to see you all. And Jesse, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you so much for having me. Sure.
It's clearly a project that's quite personal to you and somewhat autobiographical. Mm-hmm. It's also your second feature, which I think that idea of, what will your second feature be? How did you kind of know that this was the film that you wanted to make now?
Well, I had the great fortune of no one seeing my first movie, so this got to feel like a debut. I don't know, I write a project every year. My background is playwriting, so this was just the next thing I wanted to write, but was setting this in Mongolia because I had tried to adapt it from a story I'd written about these two guys who go to Mongolia, and they're going to stay at like a yurt farm, and it's about them getting disillusioned by their friend who they realize when they get there. I had created this yurt farm for like some Norwegian tourism board. Anyway, so like it's about these like two guys. Like I'm in awe of Benji. Benji's in awe of this guy Dennis, who we're going to visit, and it's all about like disillusionment and a false sense of purity. And so it was an interesting story, and I loved the idea of shooting in Mongolia. And it was just like not working though. There was not like this like third element that was really interesting. I had some themes, but it just felt like they were just going from one thing to the next. And as I was kind of like. I was like banging my head against the table as I was writing this thing because I loved the idea of shooting there and I loved these two characters, and yet the movie wasn't feeling like this rich textural thing. It was just feeling like one thing. And then an ad popped up on the internet for Auschwitz tours with lunch. It literally said Auschwitz tours and then parentheses with lunch. And it was like literally at the exact day that I was like, I'm either going to trash the script or it's got to change. And so it was just like so lucky. And then it just flowed out. I had done a trip like this with my wife in 2008, not on a guided tour, but we went to all these cities, and the house where we filmed the movie is like actually my family's house. So I had gone on a trip in 2008 to like see this house. And it was really hard to get there and to figure out and to navigate because it was prior to like all modern technology that allows us to find anything anywhere else. And so it was just, it was this really impactful trip, but also a trip that, again, this was in 2008. I was with my wife, but it was a trip that was both impactful, that I got to see these places. And on the other hand, it just felt like a total disconnect emotionally from the history. I just had this feeling of, why am I not crying here? Why am I not feeling something here? I'm looking at this house, but it just looks like a 3-story apartment building. It doesn't look like something. I remember driving through the city of Krasnostav, this little town, and I turned to my wife and I was like, oh, I thought everybody here would look like me. And it's because I was like expecting some kind of like catharsis, some kind of mirror, and I just wasn't, I didn't see anything. And I thought that would be really interesting to write. I could set these two guys who I love, who I've been writing for a while, and I could set them on a Holocaust tour, and suddenly their interpersonal strife could be against the backdrop of something that speaks volumes to what they're dealing with. And as they try to connect to each other and like a historical version of each other, as Benji's trying to pull the kind of emotional David back out, it's also these two guys struggling to connect to the history. And you could do all this without a heavy hand. You could do it just kind of implicitly. I didn't have to have any speeches about, I'm trying to connect to you, just like we're here trying. I didn't have to do any of that bullshit. It could just be them experiencing this moment together and have it against the backdrop of something much richer.
You said you've been writing for quite a while. You've written plays, you've written other screenplays, you've written essays. What kind of writer are you? Are you, I get up at this time, I start working at this time, I stop? Like, how does the process work for you?
It's changed a lot just based on now I am that because I have a kid and because I'm now like wanting to make a movie a year, and so I I know what I'm going to write because it's usually been like brewing in either something else that I've written in the past that was unfinished or unpublished or didn't work out well, and a new interest that I have. And so I will just take like 6 weeks. And I know that sounds maybe like a short time, but like this movie, David was a character I wrote in a play called The Revisionist that I did years ago. And then Benji is a character that I wrote for myself called Benji that I did here in the West End in a play called The Spoils. And so like I've known these characters for years. So by the time I'm actually writing the screenplay, things are kind of just like, the goal is that I'm not analyzing it intellectually, but that it's actually just flowing from like an unconscious creative place. And so now what I'll do is I'll gear up and just set 6 weeks where I can do exactly what you just said. I get up, I go to this place. I have this amazing thing which I recommend to anybody who's writing, and I'm sure a lot of people here are writer-directors as well, which is just that I write sitting next to another person. I used to sit at home amongst my awful house things and, just think I should be cleaning up, and then I would get distracted, and I would think, I'd be stuck. You said I'm allowed to speak kind of in depth because this crowd is very knowledgeable about, and forgive me if this goes too inside baseball or self-centered or whatever, but like it's just something that's been revelatory for me, which is that I used to just like write in my apartment and I would get stuck on just like a random thing like should they eat soup or should they not eat soup, and I would think like I just can't figure this out today. I gotta go outside, and I haven't done exercise in a long time, so this, and you just get sidetracked. And so what I do now is I write next to somebody who's also a writer, my friend Jim. He's an amazing writer, and we sit next to each other at the library. And I'll just ask him, Jim, should they eat soup or not soup? And he doesn't even sometimes know the context. He's just like, no, soup. And it's like, oh, soup, of course, they should eat soup. And even if it was the wrong decision in the long term, it's just to keep going. And what it does for me creatively is it just makes me not like censor myself. So I don't write in like script writing programs. I just write in email bodies just so that it never feels like official. It just feels like I don't have to censor myself. This is personal. No one's ever going to read this. And then when it's done, I'll transfer it to like a script writing, software or something and make it more official.
I want to pick up on a couple of things, one of which I feel slightly, this might be an impertinent question and you can just sort of dodge it if that's the case, obviously. But I also wonder about that process of sitting and writing next to somebody else. I obviously appreciate what you're saying about being able to kind of ask certain questions, but I wonder, I think this is possibly revealing far too much about me and less about you, but is there something about kind of sitting next to the other person that in a way makes you write because you're there to write and there's another person watching you write?
Oh, no, that's like 90% of it. It's just that you're held accountable. Yeah, because, you can't start watching movie trailers for, like every movie Jean-Claude Van Damme has been in, which is what I'll end up doing on a full Thursday. And so no, that's the thing. It's being held accountable. That's exactly what it is. And I think he probably feels the same with me. Yeah.
You said you want to make a movie a year.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I'm a depressive, and I just notice when I'm not working, it all comes out in a bad way. And I recognize that part of my busyness is maybe like a band. I'm sure a psychologist would have a fun time discovering that this is a band-aid for me dealing with real things, but I hate dealing with real things. So this is just the way I like to live my life. I just can't think of anything better. And I'm just in a very unusual place right now where I get to do that because this movie's been well received. My first movie was not. And so it was a struggle to I was, before this movie had producers or anything, I was emailing German claims conferences who give $10,000 grants to Holocaust-themed media because I was just desperate for anybody to produce it or and get investors or whatever. And now I'm just having this moment that my dad keeps reminding me, if you're lucky to have one of these in your life, you should die happy or whatever. He doesn't tell me to die now, but just in the, eventually. And so, so I recognize I'm in a lucky place right now, and so I'm yes. Doing that. So we start shooting pretty soon, the next thing, and I just want to do that as much as I can. But it also comes from we're all in the arts here, so we all know the thing. We all know that it's an unstable industry, and it just feels like I just am a paranoid and fearful person. So it just feels to me like if I'm an unstable industry that requires we're all freelance. You do one job and it ends in 3 months if you're lucky, or 6 months if you're directing, or the year if you're directing or whatever. And it just feels like. so nerve-wracking. And I genuinely have the feeling, especially being an actor for 20 years, that just like the last job might be my last, you know. Being a director, I guess now, I don't even know if I call myself that because I'm starting out or whatever, but if I do feel like I have more control over my life and my creative impulses, but on the other hand, you're kind of like, it just takes longer, as everybody knows here, it just takes longer to put the thing together. And as an actor, you can kind of flit about from one thing to the next, whereas directing, you know, you require just a huge apparatus and investment and everything. So on the one hand, I feel more in control right now, but on the other hand, I know that things just inevitably will take longer.
For A Real Pain, what kind of, I mean, you know, you've talked a little about kind of where the characters came from and what the impulse was. What about sort of hard research? What did you have to do?
Oh, well, there was tons, but it was not, first and foremost, it wasn't related to this movie. I mean, I have been obsessed with this building that my family's lived in for years, and was my dad grew up not ever hearing about the war because his parents, you know, they were racked with guilt and everything, racked with guilt and misery. And so like I, as like third generation person, became like obsessed with my family history. You know, as I said, I've recently become a Polish citizen. And like, I'm fascinated with this history. So I knew all the stuff, and all the stories that the characters are telling are just stories I've heard growing up. So I was not doing like, the research I was doing, strangely enough, was that I was writing during the pandemic, and so I couldn't go to Poland. And even if it wasn't a pandemic, I doubt I could convince my wife to let me go to Poland on a research trip. It sounds like fake. And so I was just on like Google Street View, just going street by street. So, you know, I looked and I found these brochures of like, I clicked on that ad that I was telling you about, like the Auschwitz tours, and I found like a few of these brochures, and I was thinking, you know, how much screen time I want to have. So how many days can I make this tour? So I was, you know, kind of pulling information from some brochures from these travel tours, and then I was just doing Street View. So, like for example, there's a little scene where we go and Benji buys. It's in a montage, but Benji buys water for everybody, and he doesn't get me water, and I'm just standing there watching as he charms the group. That scene is only in there because on my Google Street View tour, I went from like the location that they would start at in front of this monument to the park where they go to, and I saw there's this little fruit stand, and in an attempt to just keep writing, to just get the story out. And to not be like stifled with like too much like analytical stuff about, you know, I was just like, where are they going to go and what are they going to do? And because I know the characters well, I see that they pass a little fruit stand. So what happens at this fruit stand? Oh, well, this fruit stand at this point, Benji's trying to charm everybody and is yet to turn kind of transgressive and is yet to become antagonistic. So he's trying to charm everybody, and David's still feeling outside the group. So that's the scene takes place there, and then they get to the park. So in terms of hard research, it was just this very weird thing of doing Google Street View all over Poland.
And because you know that you're then going to be directing this, hopefully, how much are you thinking sort of visually whilst you're writing the script?
A lot. Because, and it stemmed from a few different things. One is I knew I wanted to make like this movie have some kind of familiar tropes of a buddy movie, of a road trip movie, of characters exploring the past, etc. And I wanted to make sure that the movie felt bigger in scope than its intimacy in character. And so what I started doing was just listening to Chopin music, and when I found a piece that I liked, I started writing the scenes to it. So I was just listening to it as I was writing the scenes, and then I would put the Chopin pieces in the script so that people reading the script would understand. And the reason I did it was like kind of twofold. One is so that when readers were reading it, they understood that the tone of the movie was not that these characters were experiencing like juvenile things together. Like, yes, they're sneaking on a roof to smoke pot, but actually what's happening here is part of a bigger story. And the Chopin gave me this kind of like invisible hand telling the reader and now the audience that there's something more happening here, that this is scored to kind of classical music, so this is always going to be their modern juvenilia is always going to be kind of, you know, backed by history. And so that was really helpful. And then in terms of visual stuff, I just wanted to see Poland. It was really important for me to not portray Poland like the bleak, Soviet, backwards country that I think it's been portrayed a lot, and especially in like Holocaust-themed movies, because there's a tendency of like either American Jews or maybe Israelis or something, just to make movies about Poland that was what they heard growing up, which is what I heard a lot growing up too, which is, oh, it's anti-Semitic, there are bread lines, etc. And then when I went to Poland, and I've been there several times, I just experienced the exact opposite. So I wanted to show this bright, beautiful version of Poland that I knew to be the real thing. And so so I worked with this amazing cinematographer who is known for really wonderfully bleak movies. He just won Camera Image for The Girl with the Needle. You know, he's an amazing cinematographer. He also did EO, another kind of gritty movie about the donkey. And so, but with this, I said I want it to feel like, I almost want it to feel like postcards sometimes, because the themes are going to be bleak, the history in Poland is bleak, and I just wanted to show the beauty that I saw of it to offset what I was worried will be kind of a knee-jerk reaction from especially American Jews watching it.
You mentioned your cinematographer, and you had lots of Polish heads of department, but also a really brilliant Polish producer. How did you find her?
Yeah, so our Polish producer is a woman named Ewa Pocięcka. I'm sure a lot of people know her because she's transcended just being a great Polish producer. She's an amazing international, especially European producer. She produced like Ida, Cold War, Zone of Interest, amongst many other Polish co-productions. So those are Polish movies. You know, she has the Academy Award in her office, but she's just an incredibly impressive person. And we got her because A24 was considering doing my movie initially, and they had done Zone of Interest, and they connected us with Ava. And so we got to speak with Ava. And the first conversation I had with her was she read my script, and then she said that she had her kid read my script or whatever, you know, which was like just to validate it that it wasn't just crass. But then she said, like, I just want to let you know it's going to cost $1 million to build the concentration camp scene. And I was like, wait, sorry, what? Because we had a $3 million budget. I was like, wait, we can't, what do you mean $3 million? That's a third of our budget to build a concentration camp, which already sounds like something we shouldn't be doing. Like, haven't we moved past that, you know, as a society? And she's like, well, you can't shoot in these places, so we build them. So I was like, wait, so there's somebody there who just builds these things? Who is the person in Poland who knows how to do these? And so it started out awkward, and I just kind of constantly would like, she's amazing, so this is not to sell her short in any way. This is just to say that the process of doing this was a kind of constant like of me just like saying like it would be really great if we could do this at this house. You know, I know there are production concerns, but I think if we like stick to the authenticity as much as possible, I'm happy to compromise on other things. So because it felt like the movie really had to feel specific. I know that's like pretentious and self-indulgent, but I'm also a good compromiser. So I would compromise on a million other things in order so that we can, you know, kind of have a certain specificity with my family's history. Yeah. I don't know why. It just felt like that just felt like a good North Star to have. And again, I'm like, because I'm directing it and I'm acting in it, I know where I can cut corners in other ways. Yeah. So yeah.
And I'd like to come on in a moment to that process of directing and acting, but just before that, I'm interested in when you're a writer-director, and I'm sure there are other people in the room who are writer-directors, are you bringing different parts of yourself to those two roles, if you like? And do you enjoy them both as much, or do you have a preference? How does that work for you?
It's again, people here probably have loads more experience than I do, so I could just speak to my two experiences of making movies, which have just felt like such different parts of my brain. I'm sitting there at the library writing from what I would consider to be a place, like an unconscious place. Again, forgive me if that sounds pretentious. It's just the only way I could describe not analyzing something as I'm writing it, which always works better. And then directing has felt to me like, managing like a company, and like I'm constantly trying to inject something of whimsy and something creative and being flexible, but directing for me has been an experience of like just collaboration, listening to people who have better ideas, and just being open-minded to being very prepared, and then being open-minded to throw out the plan entirely. And in this movie, we just did that in spades, because what happened was Kieran, as you could see, he's just like kind of unhinged, spontaneous performer in the best way, and I had shortlisted this movie with my cinematographer Michał and 8 Polish actors playing the other characters, and we had shortlisted every scene with photographically. So we had every shot And we had run scenes and done video coverage and everything before any of the actors got out there. But Kieran came out the day before shooting and I think read the script once and and was totally unaware of what we were doing. But the first day that he came out was, again, this is the day before shooting, and I had a 3-hour rehearsal planned where we were going to rehearse that scene where he calls everybody up on the monument to take pictures. Yeah. And he did this, and so we got together, again, we had 3-hour block for this thing. We did it once, and he was first of all, right before we did the rehearsal, he said, "What scene are we rehearsing?" And I said, "It's the scene where you call people up." He goes, "Do you have a script?" I gave him the script. He looked at the script for 30 seconds, and I said, "Okay, let's do it once." And he did it. He was so brilliant and so magical the first time we did it that, and he was off book. He looked at the script and was word for word perfect. It was just crazy. I've never seen any performer like this. And it was every day was like that on set, basically. But so after that 15 minutes of running it that one time, I said, let's not rehearse anything else again. Let's use what this movie needs more than anything, which is that character's mercurial spontaneity as the engine of the movie. And let's just shoot it, which we did the next day.
I think it's kind of out in the world now that you were not familiar with his work before you cast him. Yeah. So what was it about him that you saw? Because by the sounds of it, what you didn't quite see the full extent of what it would be like to work with him.
Yeah, it was tough to cast because it's you're trying to cast kind of the essence of somebody because the part has so many layers, but it all has to feel like it's of a person. It's hard to describe. It just felt like the part had to be somebody who could seamlessly be funny and sad at the same time. And I hadn't seen Kieran in something, but I just knew of his reputation, and I'd met him a few times, and the first time I met him was at an audition for a movie, Adventureland, a movie that I was already in, and he was coming to audition for a character that kind of the running gag is that he punches me in the groin, and we were auditioning many guys that day, and of course no one punched me, but Kieran came in, and not only did he punch me, but he then grabbed my breast and squeezed it and he manhandled me in this audition. But he was also so funny and so spontaneous and was just doing things we didn't see throughout that day. And I think I just had this in my unconscious because when I was thinking who could play it and somebody mentioned Kieran, the only memory I had of him was him coming into the room where I was the one who had the stable control, and he tormented me, was brilliant, and made me feel like a loser. And I was like, oh, that's what this movie is. And so it just felt right. I could picture us together better than I could picture me and anybody else together. I could just see us together. And when I look at the poster of the movie, his hand is around my shoulder, and it's oh yeah, that's what I was exactly hoping this would look like. And it's also good luck. I also just got lucky that he's so great. He tried to drop out of the movie 2 weeks before we were shooting because he doesn't want to work. He's not done a movie in a decade. He didn't want to work. He wants to just be home with his kids. And so he tried to drop out. And so I didn't even know when he finally came to Poland, I didn't know if his heart was in it. Yeah. And even while we were shooting, I couldn't even tell because, again, he wouldn't talk about the scenes. I would say, do you know what scene we're doing tomorrow? He goes, no, show it to me in the morning. I don't want to talk about it. And I'd say, I would give him notes, and he would say, please shut up, please shut up, please shut up. So I would give the other actors notes. So it was hard for me to kind of navigate, and I could never tell how much he cared, but he was so great in the movie. I found out afterwards he was sleeping 2 hours a night on the floor of his hotel room. I think he was living in the spirit of this character without ever analyzing it intellectually. And so he was just acting spontaneously. And so the thing was working. So I'm sure directors here know when something's working, just stay as far away as possible. And when something's not working, figure it out.
And am I right in thinking that you were not always intending to play David?
Yeah, exactly. I thought I would play Kieran's role because after I finished writing it, it was the cool role. I mean, you'd read it and go oh, that's the role any actor would want to play. And so, one of our producers is Emma Stone, and she, had just finished acting and also producing movies with Yorgos Lanthimos, and she was just saying, you do not want to be the director and also play the unhinged character in a movie, because you're going to have to be a manager as well as kind of this spontaneous guy who's got to sit in the corner between takes because he can't engage with other people. And she was just exactly right. So I said, I'll play the other character, and it was probably the best demotion I ever got because we got this great Kieran.
Yeah. But you've touched on already, I think I was going to ask you really about how the process worked, particularly when you were kind of, you and Kieran were scene partners. But you're working with a sort of broader ensemble as well.
Yeah.
How do you manage being both in the film, directing the film, and also having to, I assume, work a little bit differently with each of the actors?
Because I have just so much gratitude and love for all of them. I, as an actor, always thought I was on a movie set ruining the movie until I got behind the camera, and then I just felt this overwhelming, my heart just opened for these people who, were exposing themselves emotionally, had memorized the script I wrote. It felt like, what a nice gesture, for who were not worried about their own vanity, even though their face was going to be projected, who were putting their own emotions into it, who were exposing themselves. And when I was on the other side of the camera for the first time, I just went, oh my God, actors are amazing. I never felt that because I've always been so cynical and self-hating that I would think, oh God, I'm a vain person who wants to be famous, all the worst things that actors can want to be. And so I thought that's what we all are, and I just had a cynical attitude. And then I got behind the camera, and the first movie I directed, Julianne Moore was in, and she did this thing in this take. It was like, oh, this is everything. This is everything. Anyway, and so I felt that way here, and I felt that way with all the actors. So when they would finish a take, even if they screwed up the lines or whatever, I would just say, that was so amazing. Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Let's do it again, and here's the script. And if you could try to say this stuff, that would be great. But I was just I guess, just overwhelmed with what they were doing. And so everybody felt, I think, this was not my intention, but I think everybody felt like they were happy to work with me. I didn't think anybody felt like I was judging them, because I was judging them, but not from a place of hoping they fail. I was judging them, hoping to support them and be in the scene with them. It was just lovely. I mean, it was lovely. It was almost a kind of thing where, I can't believe I would never be in a movie that I'm directing, because it just felt like I was on the team with the people. It felt like we were sweating together. I wasn't behind a monitor. I was there with them, and we were wearing the same jerseys.
I mean, that's really, it's so great to hear you talk about that. One of the things is, the dialogue works so well. I mean, the dialogue between you and Benji, for sure. Not you, David and Benji, for sure. But lots of the dialogue too. But certainly between the two of you, it's like a kind of screwball. Like, it's so kind of quick. There's so much there. Were these all your kind of carefully crafted words, or to what extent was there kind of improvisation or things being kind of done on the spot?
No, I mean, my background is playwriting, as I mentioned, and, there's no improv in theater because most playwrights are dead. And so theater actors just have a sense that we're not here to change the words. And luckily, Kieran's background is in theater as well. He's done several Broadway shows of Kenneth Lonergan recently. And so there was not a feeling like we're like, let's figure out what we're going to say today. No, we're just doing the script. And Kieran, as I mentioned, would memorize it that morning and be word for word perfect. There's a line that's improvised in the movie. Well, there's two lines. One is Kieran says to me in the cemetery where I'm trying to get him to stop yelling at the guy. And Kieran turns to me. It's hard to hear, but it's just brilliant. But he goes, Dave, take a seat. Text your wife. And it was so funny that he just put me in my place as he's trying to yell at this guy. And that was improvised. And then there's another line that's improvised, which is your fellow citizen, Will Sharp, who's a fucking genius. And Will improvised that thank you that he says to me when he goes, thanks, David. That was not in the script. And I think Will did it kind of as a joke, like a joke to me, Jesse, not as a joke to me, David. I think he kind of did it as like a joke. And after he did it, I was like, oh my God, that was so funny, but it's not going to be in the movie. It's too comic. And then my editor put it in his rough assembly, and I was like, oh, it kind of works. It works well. And I'm just so indebted to him because it's great because, the movie ebbs and flows from drama and quietude to humor and more sparkle. And it gets us out of that mode and back into David and Ben. It kind of resets the movie for us in a nice way after 10 minutes of quietude. So it's great. I'm indebted to him. He's a genius. It's the wonder of working with, brilliant people who are also good actors.
Yeah, he's really great.
Yeah,
And,
I love him so much.
I think the accent was his idea.
Yeah, exactly. I had written it to be a very posh kid because I had the idea that this character is the tour guide, but just academically interested in Judaism. There's a term that Jews use sometimes called philo-Semitic. Anti-Semitic, means a dislike of Jews, but philo-Semitic means a love of Jews. Philo meaning love, and but the way we process this word is actually not a good way. It's like somebody who's like obsessed with the fetishization of Jews. Like, I love your people so much. So fascinating what you guys have been through. That kind of thing. Like, it's amazing, your foods, that kind of thing. And so I thought it'd be so interesting to have a character as a tour guide who had that kind of academic, dispassionate interest in Jewish culture, so that Kieran, as we start to know Kieran, we worry that this guy might be a ticking time bomb for this guy that's kind of bullshitting a little bit. Yeah. And so I wanted to be this kind of posh, and forgive me because I don't know your culture as well as America culture, and so I thought, oh, it'd be great if it's this posh Oxford guy, who just is very, but, Will didn't want to play that kind of down the line thing, so the day before shooting, there was a lot happened the day before shooting, because no one was there. It was a small movie. No one was there 2 days before shooting. Will said, can I try an accent? Can I just send you voice memos tonight of an accent? And it's an accent. Our sound mixer was the only English crew member, and he was from Sheffield. And so Will was like, I'm just going to do what a tarn sounds like. And so it was great. It was great. I was like, that's great. Sounds more specific. The more specific, the better. And it makes you, I think, a little more sympathetic of a character.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the shoot itself.
Sure.
It sounds like you had a pretty intense schedule. How long did you shoot for?
It was 26 days in Poland and then like a half a day in New York. But the New York scenes were literally just me in the back of that car. So all the airports, everything was in Poland. Everything was in Poland. Even my apartment at the end where I hugged my family in Poland. And 26 days, I mean, normally I have to say that sounds like a lot, but it's not. But in this audience, maybe this is the first audience I can say, that's not a lot of days for the scope of the movie you just saw. Yeah. We're on airplanes, we're on moving trains, we're at two different airports that are supposed to be Warsaw and JFK. To shoot at this airport, we all had to go through regular security. I'm talking 150 people going through airport security just to shoot. So we're going in at 3 a.m. to shoot for a 10-hour day or whatever. So it was just absolutely grueling. Every day another city. If it rained for an hour on this movie, the movie wouldn't have been made. That's how tenuous and edgy this schedule was. So the fact that we finished the movie, again, I was shocked. I just remember saying to Ali, the producer, I was like, somebody's going to get COVID and none of this is going to work. Because also our actor, Kurt Egyawan, who's a brilliant British actor, he was on House of the Dragon, and we were taking a big risk by having him in Poland. He plays the Rwandan character, and we knew that House of the Dragon is this $200 million epic thing that we don't have first priority on him. Yeah. So if we missed one day or if it rained one day, we lose this vital character. So it was really tenuous and risky.
Because you shot in a number of different locations, could you talk about what that meant in terms of how you worked with your production designer, also on that tight of a shoot?
Yeah, she went above and beyond. Her name is Mela Melek. She's Polish, and she just went above and beyond. By way of example, since you just saw the movie, I can talk about it more clearly. Like that, the restaurant with the big climactic restaurant scene where Benji goes to the bathroom and he's playing piano and all that. That place we walked into and we were like, oh, this is perfect. It's like a Jewish themed restaurant in Lublin. We were like, oh, this is perfect. We don't have to do anything. And she said, would you mind if I did 2 days? And she redesigned the entire place that was initially perfect to just look better on camera. This is a thing that I'm getting more educated about, is the difference between looking at something and thinking it looks great and a production designer whose expertise is to know how it's going to show up on camera. And she redesigned that place to the point where they paid her to keep everything. So so she just did this constantly. There was constantly an effort. She was so great that the day before, I mean, I know it sounds like all the day before, but that's what this movie was. It was all day before's problems. And the day before we shot in the airport said to us, you know how we said you can use our conveyor belts to go through airport security? You can't, we lied. And so Mela found this private security company that owns their own, this is the day before we shot at an airport, that owns their own conveyor belt. And so she got them to bring it down to Radom in Poland. It was just again, it was every day. I mean, even stuff like my family's house, where we shot, she made it look much nicer. She built the railing on the balcony that those guys have to come out on because there was no railing. So it was the movie's naturalism. So it's it's not like Megalopolis or something where you see the production design. It's but being on the other side of it, I just saw what a wondrous job she did.
And what about the other design elements? Thinking about working with your costume designer and how that worked in terms of the characters and really sort of establishing. I mean, we talked about Will Sharp earlier on. I mean,
Yeah.
that was quite a look.
Yeah, that was based on so I had done these tours. I didn't do it in Poland, but I had done them in China, Venezuela, and Nepal, and I knew I knew how these guys dressed. It's cargo pants. It's a practical hat. It's and it's a book, and so like I just knew what these guys looked like. On Will, it ended up looking kind of nerdy, which was like 10% his direction that he wanted to go in. This kind of more sweetly nerdy thing that he wanted to go in. I think I would have made his shirt untucked or something like that. But that's what he liked, and that was great. In terms of like me and Kieran, I had this plan with the costume designer of like that I start out in blues and colder colors, and Kieran starts out in warm colors, and then it was just like, again, Kieran was there the day before shooting, so he came in and he was like, no, I don't like any of this stuff, and so we changed his wardrobe. Again, the day he was there. So we changed his wardrobe. And Kieran's great. I don't mean to be critical of him. He's just so immersed in a way that he relies on his id. He's not like, well, I don't like this red shirt because I think he's just like, no, it's not going to work. I don't know why it's not going to work. And so that the plan kind of changed. And then, it was just about finding how funny we can go. Will somebody wear a fanny pack? Oh, sorry, you don't call it that. What do you call it? We call it a fanny pack.
We call it a bum bag.
Of course. Yeah, so... my deep apologies, for so stuff like that. It was like, how kind of funny can we go with the suburban people? Jennifer Grey, I wanted her character to just be the epitome of like cool. I wanted her to be cool so that, she just brings another kind of element to this otherwise stodgy tour group. And so I just said, what do you feel coolest in? She was like, I only have one pair of jeans that I like cool in. I was like, great, bring them. And so it was like that. It was just kind of thinking it through just character by character.
I mean, Jennifer Grey just is cool.
Yeah, she's cool. Exactly.
I think we have to just recognize that she's cool. Whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, she's based on my neighbor, Marcia. Martha's my neighbor. Marcia is her character. And Martha is so cool. And when she got divorced, she told me she started getting interested in like her Hungarian heritage. And it was like a way for her to find grounding after feeling displaced after a divorce. And I remember that story. She told it to me 10 years ago. I just remember thinking, that's so fascinating. And it's quite similar to what the guys are doing in this. They lost their grandma and they lost each other. And so they're trying to connect to something that'll ground them.
You touched earlier on the sort of tone of the film and writing to Chopin and how important it was to sort of be able to convey a sense of the tone. And the tone of the film is really delicate because it is very funny, but it's also dealing with massive subjects, historical trauma, kind of family trauma, memory, history. How, when you had persuaded the concentration camp people to let you go and film there, how different did it feel to go and film there, and how did you kind of manage that? What I assume was, given what you've told me about the schedule, a pretty kind of short...
It was a day. It was a day, which actually, like, with the actual amount of screen time it has, a day was luxurious. But we thought there might be more time. We thought there might be more, and we did a lot of other shots. Yeah, with that scene, with the concentration camp, I had 2 scenes written. The scene you saw, which was the kind of austere version, which felt to me like definitely the scene we should put in the movie. And then, because I had this great privilege, we were given this great privilege of being able to shoot at this actual camp, which had never been done before. They'll do news stories there, or docs or whatever. I had another scene planned just in case, and the scene was a scene. It was basically, we're going through, and Benji, Kieran's character, is kind of overwhelmed with his feelings, and he sneaks behind a barrack and he starts like smoking pot. And the tour, we can't find him anywhere. We can't find him. And then he comes in, and I see that his eyes are red, and I know he's stoned, but the group just thinks he's been crying, and maybe he has too. And so they all kind of embrace him, and David is again left on the outside watching as this whole group huddles around Kieran, who's stoned, hugging him, and David can't get a foothold in the group again. And so I had these 2 scenes written, and when I went to the camp and we're scouting the camp and they're telling us what happened in this room and our gaffer is there looking for plugs and can't find power sources, and they say there's a power source on the outside of the gas chamber, and all the reality of this place hits me. I'm like, we cannot have a scene here. We cannot do anything other than the most austere, simple, mature, kind of adult version of what this would be, and so that's what we filmed, which is basically like, we set up a shot. We said to the actors, you can please walk in this room, react naturally. Will, the tour guide, he might be reading something. He might not be reading something. Just react as you would and try not to block each other so we can see everybody. And so we just did the scenes like that. We set up the camera. The actors didn't know where the camera was. They came in. They saw the shoes. Kieran, as you could see in the movie, Kieran saw the shoes. He didn't know where the camera was. And he went, just like this breath, and I didn't know that until we were in the editing room. I was like, oh, that's a good moment to go out on, but that's just all real. And I asked Kieran later, are you okay? He was like, I just miss my kids so much. And he saw the kids' shoes, so just like hit him in this real way. So that was the way we designed it, and it just felt like that's the only respectful way to shoot a scene at this place.
Absolutely. And then the final question from me before we open up to the audience, and again, it's a sort of location-related question. You've mentioned a couple of times about, your family home and the fact that you had been you'd been in 2008 and you'd seen it, and then you go back there and you're filming it. You said that there was something about in the 2008 visit, that sense of what should I be feeling and why am I not feeling it? How was it when I guess I'm imagining that when you go back and you're shooting, you're acting and you're directing, so you're not even registering what you're feeling, are you?
No, except for what my character is feeling, which is, in the case of this movie, this anticlimactic feeling. Yeah. They get to the building, they say, God, it's so unremarkable. I don't know what I pictured. Should we try doing this thing? And they do this thing, and then somebody tells them, no, you can't do that thing. So like, okay, I guess we have to go. And that's what I was feeling, because I was acting that day, so I was feeling the things my character was feeling. But also, it was just a crazy, crazy day. We had to shoot all of this in one day. The characters getting out of this car, walking through this park, several tracking shots of them looking for the house, then shooting them at the house, then shooting these other guys this way after the sun was almost down, because we planned it that way or whatever. And then it was going to start raining at like 5 o'clock, and we were there till 7. And so I was like, I know we're going to lose 2 hours. My lunchtime was weird because I had to meet the mayor of Crustis. I mean, it sounds like an honor. I got to meet the mayor. But it was also like, I have to be shot listing now, but the mayor is being so nice kind of thing. And so it was just like all these practical things. And I called my dad at the end of the day, and I was like, Dad, we did that scene that took place at our family's house. And he was like, how did it feel? And I was like, felt like I was on the set of a superhero movie. It just felt like any other movie in the world. I was just worried about sun. I was worried about the actor showing up on the balcony. I was worried about getting a translator to speak to the actor up there, because I thought he could speak English, then he couldn't. And so it was just like, it felt like being on the set of any other movie ever made. And that just taught me a life lesson about what movies are, which is just, you can try to have all the authentic feelings in the world, but at the end of the day, you're just trying to make a movie. And there's so many technical and practical considerations that there's no time for indulgement.
Let's have some questions from you. There's one up here. Have we got a microphone? Yeah, it's coming to you.
Hello, I love the movie.
Thanks. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Kind of boring logistical question maybe, but there was a second unit I saw on the titles.
Yeah.
And was it a one-camera shoot, generally speaking, with the actors and you in the main unit? Were you with the second unit at all, or did they do their own thing?
Wow, that is an amazing question, and something. No, it really is, because my first movie we shot on 16mm film. It was during like the height of the pandemic. We had a cap on the amount of film we could use, and we barely got enough shots. We were also working like 9-hour days, because at the time we thought people would get COVID if they worked 10 hours. I don't know why, but anyway, so like. With this, I said, I know we were on a much smaller budget for this movie, but I said, we just need a second camera. We have ensemble scenes where you have to shoot coverage on 8 people. And so we absolutely need a second camera. So what I said was, let's do this. Let's have a second camera. Let's have a second camera that's there for group scenes, and let's have them, and night scenes, because it was short nights at that time, because we were in the summer. And so I said, let's have 2 cameras for night scenes, and then every other day, let's have them do B-roll of Poland, because I wanted to make sure it had the feeling of a road trip movie. So sometimes that meant shooting, over somebody who had our hair in a car, or just shooting as part of a montage these different moments that you see of Poland. So it was very important to me, and they were working, I think probably it would be something around 20 out of 26 days we had a second camera either with us or in a second unit. But we did not have a full second unit. It was 3 guys. It was an operator, an assistant, and an AD or something. Yeah, thank you so much. What a nice question. Yeah.
Right. Hi, I just wanted to ask, having obviously been an actor who's worked with a lot of directors, which is kind of like most directors don't get to do that, right?
Yeah.
They get to be on set and learn from other directors. How has that informed your directing and other things that you try not to do, or that you didn't understand about directing, or sort of, how do you think about that?
Thank you so much. That's really sweet. I think that what occurs to me right off the bat is just that I've seen people who were fine directors and terrible leaders. And it's just the worst thing in the world, because as an actor, you just feel like I'm working for somebody who just hates everybody they're working with. And so, like, I'm doing a thing tomorrow with my favorite director I've ever worked with, Richard Ayoade. He's introducing the film tomorrow. And he was so gentle. He loved the people who he worked with so much that he was just so gentle. I remember I thought I was improvising the entire movie, but I was doing the scripted lines the whole time. He just made me feel so empowered, and that just went down the line for everybody, not just actors, gaffers, props, everything. Everybody got to feel like they can do a good job, and he was such a good leader. And yet the movie that we did, The Double, has just like the most distinct look. So if you watch the movie, you think this must be some crazed auteur. But being on the set, I realized, no, this is like the most sweet, collaborative person who just created this gentle environment where everybody felt like they could do their best job. And so that's the thing that sticks with me a lot more than really any of the technical things, because that stuff you can kind of learn or remember, but like in terms of just setting a tone, like that was the most important thing for me to try to copy. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, really lovely film, and so many nice directorial choices in it.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the opening and closing shot, the sort of track in the airport, and then you bend round. Like where that idea came from, and like how far ahead did you have that? Did you shot list it? Yeah.
It was fascinating, because basically what I had written is a slow zoom in, people passing, and then finally find this lone guy, and then put the title over his face. And so I wanted this slow zoom, basically, I don't know if you'd call it like on access, but basically just straight, just going down the barrel and then finding him. And it was just because I wanted to introduce this guy who is lost in a sea of people, but by the end you realize this is the only place he can be. And so I just had all these thoughts of why that image would work well, and why we'd find this guy sitting there alone, and kind of we just start thinking about him as an audience. And so that was the idea with it. And we got to this airport that actually hadn't opened yet. It was an airport in Radom. We don't know why it was built, because they do one flight a day there. And it hadn't opened yet, and so we didn't have enough, like, literally furniture there to make this long shot, to give us enough depth to this long shot. So I got in there, and I was like, oh my God, there's no seats even in here. Like, what are we going to do? And the cinematographer, I looked over, and he had been essentially designing the shot that we have in it, which is basically shoot against the windows. It's supposed to be JFK, too, so you can't see much. So shoot against blown-out windows, and we'll shoot that in the daytime. I mean, early enough that the windows can be blown out, and shoot it this way so it looks like it has depth because of the windows, and then only when we pull around, we're too tight to realize that there's not much going on behind Kieran's head. So it's just this brilliantly designed shot, and it did what I wanted it to do, but with the practical considerations of this airport. And it was just amazing. I commend you to watch his other movies, especially the movie Sweat. He's just a brilliant cinematographer and an amazing technician who's been a grip for a long time too. So he just knows the practical nature of shooting. And we managed to do that shot twice in that day. Maybe there's like 6 takes total. Most of the difficulty with that take, as you would imagine, was just extras, just making sure the extras are doing the right thing and crossing in front. It was a scene that, for the very first time on set, I wasn't in. It was the only scene I'm not in. And so it was just real fun to watch the crew work. I was thinking, it must be fun to direct. Because I was like, I was kind of just like watching this thing occur, and people were all expertise, and the ADs were experts in the extras movement and everything. And I was just like, this is so fun to watch this movie get made. Because it was just like, I couldn't meddle, And I said to Kieran, I was like, can we talk about the scene? He was like, if you talk to me about the scene, I'll fucking kill you. And so I was like, okay, good luck. And I was like, do you know what you're thinking? He's like, shut up. I just stepped back.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Congratulations on a really beautiful piece of work.
Thank you.
This is a writing question, really. One of my favourite scenes was when Benji's character is on the train, and he has this moment of realisation about being a Jew on a train in Poland, and he's incredibly uncomfortable about, eating the food and being in luxury, and that felt an incredibly true moment. Was it something you'd felt yourself, and you transposed that into the script, or?
Yeah, it's just, that scene is just my entire preoccupation with life, is how ironic it is that I am such a miserable shithead, and yet my family's been through hell. And how do I walk around and get a scone, for an hour, and sit somewhere for an hour with my stupid scone when my family survived by miracles to get down here? And so that scene is basically just the thing that's been in my head since I'm young, and since I learned my family history. Not only learned my family history, just kind of realized who I am, which is basically this very lucky, meaningless person. And so that's what that scene is. And when I first saw this ad online for Auschwitz Tours with Lunch, the first thing that jumped into my head is how awkward it is that we want to stay at the Sheraton Hotel and get a continental breakfast, but we want to spend the day at Auschwitz. But for lunch, we want to go back on the air-conditioned bus and eat a nice food that's been packed by the Sheraton. And so it's just like, so this is what's on my mind all the time. And that's a real just microcosm of my head. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a Jess or a Jessie, and I went to Poland in June. So when I saw the trailer for this, I was like, wow.
We did it.
We did it. And I was so excited because I was just like, this was such an intense, incredibly surreal, very overwhelming experience.
Yeah.
I was wondering because when I looked up an interview that you did, and you mentioned this evening that you got a Polish passport. And I was wondering, after making this movie, it was like a fantastic movie, and there's loads of stuff that I would, like the train stuff. There's so much stuff I want to ask about with that. But what I'm wondering in terms of like where next for your future films is, did you come away from this feeling like, in terms of collaborating with locals in Poland, are there other films set there that you would still? Is there more basically that you want to do in Poland? Because, for instance, with our group, it was led by Polish Jews living in Poland, which was just wild. And so I came away feeling like there are so many stories I don't know, and it's just so interesting what we tell about Polish history and Jewish Polish history. And so, this is incredible as being a different narrative. And what other narratives do you want to tell from Poland, if any?
That's such a nice question and completely worthy, yes, of the effort. Yeah, thank you for asking that, and thank you for telling me about your trip. While I was there, I was like so in love with working there, because it was just like, you just are working with people, you feel like a family, and I was like, I want to come back here in 6 months and do something else. And like I was starting to like just sketch out ideas, but they were all really bad ideas. And so, no, but the thing is, like, I was even nervous to like make a movie that takes place with the theme of the Holocaust, because it just feels like there's 15 movies a year that do that. Maybe one is good, and they're not, and like a lot of times they're not like fresh. And so I was like, okay, if I was going to do this, I really want to like fight against all of the tropes that I've seen in Holocaust-themed movies of a feeling of sanctimony, of self-importance, of, the movie seeming like it's patting itself on the back for doing this important work for you, the dumb audience. I wanted it to feel like this is something relatable and not shaming the audience for watching this thing that they so nobly made, you know what I mean? And so with respect to all of that stuff and all my thoughts about Holocaust movies, I probably won't do anything like this again, just because it feels like even this was risky, because I've seen movies with this theme before. Do you know what I mean? So that felt risky. So the next movie I'm directing takes place in the world of community theater, because that's like the other thing I was obsessed with when I was younger, just community theater musicals. So basically, I want to change it up, but I do want to work in Poland again. Eva, this amazing producer, as I was telling you about, it's like, you should come back and work in Poland, and we'll help you out. And now that you're a Polish citizen, again, the budget was like $3 million, but if I was a Polish citizen, it would be like $10 million, because you get like state funding if you're local. So anyway, I would like have an advantage there. That's not why I got the citizenship, But I'm just saying, it comes with a coupon. So anyway, it was like, I wish she told me that years ago, but nonetheless, I would love to go back there. The crews are amazing. I'll just say one final thing, which is that like the best film school in Europe, and forgive me if there's an amazing film school here in London, I'm sure there's several, but there's this film school in Poland called the Łódź Film School, LODZ, and people from all over this continent go there, learn Polish for 9 months, and then go to that school. It's that great. So Poland is constantly like, churning out some of the greatest filmmakers at every level and every position.
I'm sorry that has to be the last question. I'm sorry if you had a question and we didn't get to you, but thank you so much for the film, and it's
thanks,
just
Sandra.
a pleasure to hear you talk about it.
Thank you so much for coming. It was thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you.
This podcast was recorded at a Directors UK member event. You can hear plenty more directors in conversation by subscribing on the usual streaming platforms. Follow us on social media and find out more about us at directors.uk.com.